the interesting, I think, things of being a kid that I wish I could tap into now as an adult is I would have dreams at night that would essentially equate to what we may know as a life review. Now, as a kid, I don't know what I needed to kind of tee up and balance at the end of every day, but I would see the day in review as a movie. And I could step into the screen, act as anyone else, my friends, my family members, whoever. I could step in and see things from their perspective. I could replay the coulda, shoulda, wouldas in that sense. And I would have this kind of tete-a-tete with my guides. This is what happened as the result of what you did. And it was this kind of reshaping. And then the second part of the dream would often be precognitive, where I would be shown events that were coming up. So one in particular was a family member who we weren't necessarily close with, who tried to pick me up from school one day. And for weeks before that event, I saw her car. I saw where we were out in the parking lot having like field day or like an extended recess. And I was shown different options. This is what you do. You go stand next to a teacher or you go to this specific place. The dreams would always be black and white the farther out from the event they were. And we could step into the screen again and adjust things and try different things on. And then the closer I got to the event, the dream would become more vivid and more colorful, and I could change fewer and fewer things.
Welcome in. I'm Kimberly. I'm so glad you're here today. I am getting goosebumps with our guest today. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. I'm glad that you're here to join me for it. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you leave and make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And I want to let you know two things. If you'd rather listen than watch, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and all podcast platforms. In addition, if you're fluent in Spanish or Portuguese and that feels more comfortable for you, just look in the description box down below. We actually have the channel translated into those two languages, so that's there for you if it works better for you. In addition, if you'd like to keep track of what's happening around the planet, but it feels a little overwhelming, and I don't blame you, you might want to sign up for a Friday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, we send out a very short, very sweet, very informative email newsletter highlighting what we think are important events happening around the planet. It's super easy to sign up, super free, super fun. I think you're going to love it. And with that, I want to welcome in Intuitive Channel, Heather Mays. Heather, how are you today?
Hey, Kimberly, I am so good. Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to see what we co-create in our conversation today.
I know, and that's exactly what I'm excited about as well. I am so interested in the group that you work with and the messages. It just really resonates with me. But what I really want to know right now is how did you get started in this? I mean, a nice girl like you, channeling, come on, how did
I
that happen?
know. Who would have thought, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I think the journey to channeling started very early. I didn't come to the actual channeling piece until, well, doing it openly, we'll say, until much later in life. But I came into this world, I think, with a lot of the senses wide open, as so many of us do. And then we have programming or life circumstances that kind of say, you just go fit in this box. Don't be tuning into those extra sensory perceptions or anything like that. But I was very blessed and lucky to come into a family with a couple of unique conditions or criteria, we'll say. And one was that we had very open and honest discussions about woo-woo stuff, what we would probably classify as woo-woo. We talked about ghosts, we talked about mediums, we talked about channeling, we talked about all of those things in our family unit. In addition, I had a sister who was severely handicapped. She had cerebral palsy and required care that was so intensive that she lived outside of the home in a care facility for much of the week. Sometimes we would reunite and bring her home on weekends. But she ended up being one of my greatest teachers in a couple of ways. I was thinking before we came on the call that for me to connect with those extrasensory perceptions where our intuitive knowledge kind of transcends the physical boundaries. I think for me, a lot of that started with my sister Wendy, because I used to be so fascinated by the fact that she was nonverbal. She couldn't express herself. She couldn't use a lot of her body. And so, just for fun as a kid, I wanted to see what it was like to be like her. And so I would walk around, blindfolded, or I would try to hear out beyond what I thought was in my immediate space. And what I realize now as an adult who also teaches and helps people tune into their own intuition, those are some of the things that I advise people to do now, to tune in outside of the physical. So I think I was just doing that innately out of curiosity. But the main reason my sister was a great teacher for me, and what put me on this path and trajectory, was when I was 6 years old. She was 9. She passed away, and in a dream state came to me the night that she was transitioning and walked me through her death experience. So I had a shared death experience at a very young age without, I think, the conditioning that a lot of us have as we get older. I didn't feel it as loss. I didn't feel it as grief. I didn't feel it as sadness, because what she showed me in that experience was essentially her transcending her limitations and her flying. And I got to see the bright and beautiful, unlimited nature of heaven, of the other side, however anyone classifies it. Words, sounds, colors, way beyond what we can describe here. And I saw it so clearly. I can still, many, many years later, remember it with specificity to this day. And since that evening, she joined my team of guides for a lot of years. And I knew her almost more intimately, more fully fledged as a spirit than I did as her as a physical soul. So it was this unique relationship of her kind of opening the door wide open and saying, here's this real world that you don't see in your human form, but here it is. And I also, dovetailing off of that, was aware of more guides like that in that kind of spirit dimension, other realms, things like that. And I'll pause there to see if you have any questions. But I had some fun and informative experiences with those guides as well growing up.
I don't have a question so much as I have just a comment of what a beautiful experience that you
It really
got to
was.
participate in. And I
Yeah.
understand that specificity of memory. It is for the viewers that are watching, when you have an experience like that, it almost is seared in your memory and you
Yeah.
just don't lose it. And I imagine that you're able to pull in the frequencies of that experience as well.
Absolutely. And seared in is the perfect description for it. It just becomes hardwired. And I think, there's no mistaking it for me because of its frequency. I can clearly tell that wasn't something I dreamed up as a kid. There's no way. I was a pretty imaginative child, but I couldn't have come up with that.
Yeah.
And had it been something I imagined, it would have changed over time, or I would have, torn bits and pieces of it out of my memory or reshaped them. And it has stayed the same for 40 plus years now. And yeah, it's like it's ingrained, almost like a tattoo on your soul. That's how I'm going to describe it.
Oh, I like that.
It's
That's good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just there. And it became such a unique part of me. The other thing that it kind of allowed me to have that I think helps me today in what I do is almost have this dual perspective. It's funny, we have dual monitors a lot. A lot of us are familiar with that. And for me, that's the best way I can explain it, that I had this awareness of being a child, being 6 years old, needing to do the kid things. But then I had this whole expanded perspective of I'm not here alone. I have a team of guides who are helping and directing and not calling the shots by any means. But I joke that I think maybe I wasn't supposed to come in here unsupervised. So I got a whole group from the very beginning because I couldn't be left to my own devices. But it was just this weird dichotomy of experience that, again, I didn't make any of that up. I could very clearly say when I was, maybe telling a little fib as a kid or imagining something, and it had a completely different frequency and texture to what I would receive from my guides. So one of the interesting, I think, things of being a kid that I wish I could tap into now as an adult is I would have dreams at night that would essentially equate to what we may know as a life review. Now, as a kid, I don't know what I needed to kind of tee up and balance at the end of every day, but I would see the day in review as a movie. And I could step into the screen, act as anyone else, my friends, my family members, whoever. I could step in and see things from their perspective. I could replay the coulda, shoulda, wouldas in that sense. And I would have this kind of tete-a-tete with my guides. This is what happened as the result of what you did. And it was this kind of reshaping. And then the second part of the dream would often be precognitive, where I would be shown events that were coming up. So one in particular was a family member who we weren't necessarily close with, who tried to pick me up from school one day. And for weeks before that event, I saw her car. I saw where we were out in the parking lot having like field day or like an extended recess. And I was shown different options. This is what you do. You go stand next to a teacher, or you go to this specific place. The dreams would always be black and white the farther out from the event they were. And we could step into the screen again and adjust things and try different things on. And then the closer I got to the event, the dream would become more vivid and more colorful, and I could change fewer and fewer things. So now, as an adult, I'm like, where did that skill go? That would be so helpful because what I think was happening was I was seeing possible timelines and things
Yeah.
kind of routes that things could take energetically. And I could choose to go back into the same dream, just like you're pressing play on a video night after night after night. So that was, again, kind of an unusual thing. And I would go to school and try to talk to my friends. Well, what did you dream about? And, ask them, what did your guides have to say? And I would just get the blank stares and the like, okay, weird girl, I don't know what you're doing. So I talked about that aspect of my being, my experiences, less and less and less, and kind of shrunk
Yeah.
that down to compress it, because we all want to be normal. Nobody wants to be the one who stands out for something strange or weird. So it evolved to me kind of really pursuing things academically. And I read as many books as I can about world religions to see everybody's different perspective. I read about other psychics, other mediums, ghost stories, remote healing, energy, all of it. Just couldn't get enough of it, because that's where I could say, hey, there are other people out there like me.
Yeah.
So it kind of led again to this being out of step. There's the one version of me, but then there's this other version of me. And yeah, bringing all of that into a holistic way of being in the world took many, many years I still don't know if I'm fully comfortable with it, but
Yeah, that's I wonder, the question I want to ask right now is, how did you integrate your understanding or the knowledge that you got, the greater knowledge that you got in your life, with just the day-to-day conversations of young kids as you were growing up? I would imagine in some ways it was very confusing.
it was very confusing. That's such a great perception that you have, because I was not really a fan of, I don't want to say trivialities in a judgmental
Yeah,
way, but for me, playing with Barbies or doing this or that, it just didn't hold the same interest as all this other amazing stuff that I knew to be real and was as real to me as, somebody playing tag or catch. So I think I also was very grounded and curious as a child. I was out in nature a lot. When I was reading all those books, it was often in the backyard, surrounded by dogs, and just out in nature. So there was this understanding of almost having a dual perspective, that
yeah,
this is what it's like to be human, and it's important, and you need to do that stuff. You can't forsake it for this world, and you can't, you have to find that balance. And I think that was really challenging, especially coming out of adolescence into the dreaded teenage and early 20s, when I started having like real life stuff going on, car accidents, and my apartment got robbed, and I was taken to court for one of the accidents, and like all these things where I was like, hey, this is too human. I don't, what happened? What happened to the elevated fun stuff? But all of those were things that I needed to walk through and work through to fully integrate everything, because I think part of our journey is
Yeah.
seeding the good stuff into our physical third dimensional world. And so if we're not here, I joke sometimes it's like intuitive messages are almost like the Amazon packages. If you're not home to get what's meant for you, then it's going to go, the driver's going to go around the block and you won't be there to get the message that you're supposed to get. So being fully integrated and part of the human world was and is really important for any of us connecting into these kind of broader, more
Yeah.
expanded topics.
And I think you make such a good point with that, Heather, in that there are lessons in this dimension that you simply can't get in other
Mhm.
dimensions. It's very specific, very tactile, very dense and human,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
overlooking them is you're losing so much. You're losing so much of the experience of that lesson because we come here for the tough stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like going to college and learning the theory of everything and then
Yeah.
going in the real world and experiencing, oh, this is what my professor meant about X, Y, or Z.
This is
It's
harder
the
than I thought.
yeah. Can I go back to the lecture hall because that was fine? But it's the application of things, and I think that's where we absolutely shine, because that is our expression and the seed of our soul coming through those lessons and learning them, and that's where we truly expand. And from that expansion, we're then able to access and pull in more of the higher frequency or the consciousness. But I think sometimes if you are just phoning it in on the human existence, you're going to miss some of that higher stuff because you just aren't really, it's almost like an inverse gravity. You aren't weighted in the world enough to be able to grab for those higher things and hold
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And I'm finding right now, maybe you've had this experience as well, is as we are moving through these shifting of energies on the planet, and awarenesses come in that are new and fresh and broader, I almost appreciate the human experience even more because I'm
Yes.
seeing the contrast between that expanded awareness and the absolute physicalness of the experience here on Earth. So little
Mm.
things like, going for a walk or eating a particular food, I'm really like, oh wow, this is a unique experience right here. This is
Yeah.
totally human. It is so rich and so deep, and I can see it more clearly because my awareness is a little bit more expanded.
Yes, we get kind of skewed or acclimated to appreciation and compassion, because those are very high frequencies. And when I work with clients in a mediumship capacity, that is what spirit talks about often is the touch, the I'm here, there's a limit to me, my skin is here, touching something, petting a dog, feeling
Yes.
something
Mhm.
physical. We don't have that on the other side. This is the place where we get to do all of that. So like you said, the
Yeah.
chocolate cake or the walk in nature, the breeze on your skin, the sunburn that drives you nuts, all of it is
Yeah.
unique to our experience and something we could totally cherish as well.
Yeah. You had talked about reading outside, often surrounded by dogs. Do you think that's where your animal communication kind of started kicking in?
I think it got enhanced there. So my earliest memory of animal communication was probably around, I don't know, 4 or 5. The neighbors across the street, we lived on a dead end street, so there was like no traffic on our road. And I still probably wasn't supposed to go across the street to these neighbors. Again, I'm 4, but like I said, I wasn't supposed to come in unsupervised. But um, but they had horses that they boarded at a at a facility during the week or on the weekends. And so sometimes the horses were there, sometimes they weren't. And I would go visit the horses, feed them grass, like they couldn't do that for themselves. But they would tell me like gossip about the barn where they would visit, like, oh, this person, that, and the other. Or they would say, I would prefer to have grass from over there where it's shady. And I just had this awareness of them. I could also hear plants as well in my yard that would say, hey, how you doing? Like it was just this weird, I was a weird kid, Kimberly. It was just this expanded understanding of everything has a consciousness, everything has a perspective, everything has a voice.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, literally neighborhood dogs would come in droves to sit outside with me. And I don't know if that's because they thought, oh, she gets us, she can hear us, or
Mhm.
because there was nothing else interesting going on in the neighborhood. I don't know. We'll leave that to anybody's assumption. But there has always been this kinship and this understanding of everything having a voice and a perspective. And I think I could attribute that to my sister as well, because she couldn't speak for herself. She couldn't move independently, but I absolutely knew her to be a fully fledged, beautiful soul. So if I could witness that, why wouldn't that apply outside of humans? Why wouldn't that
Yeah.
apply to an animal or a plant or anything like that?
Mhm. What a beautiful message. So let's fast forward to you're getting into the 20s. I imagine you did not start channeling as a career right
No,
out of
I
the gate.
actually, yeah, no, I took the like safe, don't stare at me, I'm not weird at all route, and went into corporate America for 25 years as an analyst and a project manager. I can't even think of it now. It feels so like such another lifetime, but absolutely data and analytics and all the things in that realm. Still did this work on the side as a part-time profession with friends who helped me really learn and hone things. And then I studied with a lot of different mentors and took all the classes and all the things over, a long period of time before I felt comfortable really aligning, I think, the true nature of who I was as a kid and then what I could bring as an adult with the perspective and the responsibility and the ethics and the attention to detail from, because it's different to do this work on behalf of other people and with other people in partnership versus just kind of kicking it around for yourself. So I needed to learn all of that as well and really be comfortable speaking out and being in that space fully before I even, kind of opened the doors as you say for business for doing this work. But then as soon as I did that in a larger capacity, I learned almost exponentially more because the universe, the guide, spirit, whatever, started bringing all these different experiences in front of me. It's almost like somebody, when you go shopping, if you're imagining going shopping on Rodeo Drive or something. Oh, how do you like this? Would you like this outfit? How does this look? It's like all these different things. Do you like animal communication? You may also be interested in this. And so my horizons got expanded so much. And that's kind of how I think my book came to me, how I started doing art. And then eventually on the tail end of that, channeling, because I was always channeling in a kind of call and answer capacity with my guides, but fully kind of stepping out and saying, all right, you take the voice box over, you do it. I'm going to go take a nap. That took a little work and a little trust to get there.
Okay, so let's explain what call and answer means for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my way of differentiating. Being a trance channel is kind of your consciousness goes to, everybody does it differently, but your consciousness goes to a specific place. The you that is you kind of sits in the back seat of the car while whatever beings, whoever you're channeling, kind of start driving the car. I'm always there, but it's more getting out of my own way in a sense. The call and answer to me is I hear, I'm very clairaudient. I'm also clairvoyant. So I see, or I may even feel something, this kind of fluid conversation back and forth with my team of guides. If I'm working with a client, with theirs, with loved ones in spirit, to me, it's kind of like hosting a conference call and having a lot of beings that are there. So I can ask a question, receive an answer almost instantaneously, but I'm still fully here, being me, as opposed to a trance channeling when I'm kind of like not really as attached to. It's almost like going like fishing. That the call and answer is more I'm going to go fish for an answer and bring something back. Trance channeling is more like I'm just floating in the boat and the fish the fish will jump in when they're ready. I don't know
Mhm.
if that made any sense the way I
Yeah,
explained it.
yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. So when you started working in your profession, were you in the closet at your corporate job, or did you did
Yes. Oh,
people
100%. 100%. Yes. So it was like, it would be interesting. I could get kind of a read or a feel on somebody. Like, I remember somebody who we use this phrase so often now, but one of my coworkers was like, I just hate when people say they're in resonance with something. Like, that is so weird. Okay, I'm not going to talk about anything with you. Like, I would have this kind of safe zone where I could maybe talk to people, and then you could clearly see who wasn't really open to it. So absolutely in the closet. It wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years before I retired where I would just, because I kind of just didn't care anymore. Also, because I
Yeah.
saw like the exit ramp as well. So I would just say, hey, here's this art that I do. It's really strange. Tell me what you think. Or I think the pet communication was the easiest in for people, because anybody who has a pet would love to know what they're thinking, or if you can get answers that you maybe can't get from your veterinarian or your trainer, and those things can be validated. That's where you could kind of hook somebody and then say, well, that's not all I do. Let me know when you're ready to
Yeah,
to
your
talk about
grandmother's
some more
here.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If you'd like to
Yep.
chat.
Yeah, we can do the cat or we can expand out a little. It's totally up to
Mhm.
your comfort level.
Yeah.
But yes, it was really challenging, and I kind of learned that secretive behavior, not to be duplicitous about it, but I grew up from age 7 and until the 20s in the southern United States that we would consider the Bible Belt. And so
Yeah.
a lot of these topics were not accepted, were not to be spoken about. When I would talk about them, I would have friends say, hey, don't dream about me because that's really strange and I don't want any part of that. Or I would get called names, and I just thought, okay, this is not it's not my time. We're not my time to
Mhm.
talk about it. So I learned to kind of read the room in that way, to go along to get along, because again, I still got to do the human stuff, and there were plenty of lessons to be learned in that corporate environment that then also set up and allowed me to interact with people in the way that I do now. So it was its own treasure trove of information and lessons.
Yeah. Let's talk about your art. That is something I find fascinating, but
Mm.
also it makes so much sense to me because when you're connecting with these frequencies and these energies, it is a creative expansion. And the fact that you have actually applied it to physical art is really fascinating to me. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, one of my absolute favorite things to do, about 4 years ago, I started having different kinds of dreams. I always have dreams with my guides and things like that. But I started seeing shapes and colors and geometry and just like this giant overlay, and it would go away in a flash. And then the flashes started lasting longer, and they would get more detailed, and I could zoom out almost like a kaleidoscope where you can twist it and you could see things morph and change. And I just thought, oh, well, these are really pretty. Like, I thought it was maybe some kind of upgrade or change to my own energy. Didn't really understand that I was supposed to do anything with them. And then around that same time, I had made the request to start doing something creative again in the world. Because again, as a project manager, analyst, it was very logical, very left brained, and I missed drawing and sketching and painting. And so I started to learn a digital art application. And I realized when I would kind of tune out and doodle, these shapes would come through. If I paid attention, I couldn't replicate one if I tried. But if I kind of was not paying attention in the flow state, you might say, these would come through. And then I started seeing them not just in the dream state, not just when I would, doodle, but I would see them kind of overlaid over people out in the real world. And it became a little awkward. Like I got a delivery one time and was looking for the face of like the UPS driver, and all I saw was geometry and color. And I was trying to have a conversation with that. And I thought, okay, guides, team, what am I supposed to do with this? Because this is a little impractical now. I love it. It's beautiful, but am I supposed to do something with it? And I got the guidance that this is a new way for us to identify or understand our unlimited nature. So, in our current third dimensional world, we're so attached to our name or our geography or what we do or who we are. We have these tethers that are very third dimensional, when really the essence of our soul is frequency and geometry and music and color and so much bigger. And as we move through our ascension and our up leveling and our evolution, we're going to know each other by frequency more than we will name. And so this is like a little practice for us to be able to recognize one another. And so I started, my friends are always the best guinea pigs. I love them. I started channeling this art for them. So I knew I would create a piece for, say, Caroline, or I would create a piece for Jenna, but I would take all of them, no names associated to anything, ask each of the friend, can you find your own? Can you find one another? And they somehow knew themselves and each other based on just these combinations of frequency, color, shape, weird forms, whatever. So I started working with it and have now done it for 4 years with people in over 20 countries. And it's not about me. It is about showing someone, hey, this is you. Like you're so much more than the limited version that the world around us often wants us to be. You are untethered. You are glorious. You're resplendent. You are this beautiful combination of color and shape. And what other people witness in the art is pretty remarkable. They will see things that I don't realize are being put there. So this also goes to your question about call and answer channeling. When I'm doing the art is more of a trance channel. I'm there. I'm holding the stylus and I'm working in the app. But if I consciously focus, something inevitably will go wrong. The app will turn off. The pencil, that like strokes will be erased. If I think, oh, I think Kimberly looks like she could use some pink, I don't get pink. Like I can't, something blocks me from consciously creating it. So it's just coming through, and people will receive their portraits. I call them energetic signature portraits, and they'll see faces of loved ones in spirit. They'll see shapes of animals that they know to be totem animals of them. Sometimes they will send me a picture later that says, hey, that strange random shape, I have that as a tattoo and I've had that for 20 years. Or they'll say, I see that everywhere. And until you put it in this way, I didn't know what it was. So there's something resonant there that is connecting with people that goes beyond us. I'm just the vehicle for it to get here, but they are so beautiful and so much fun to work on. So thank you for asking about them.
Yeah, I bet it's very satisfying to do that work.
It's being able to connect into someone's unlimited absolute beauty as a soul. Yeah, I often end up I'm tearing up or I'm like cheering for somebody that I don't know. I only get a name and like the very basic geographic location, city and state or province of where someone lives. But then I can kind of see, look at all they have gone through, look at all they have going on, look at all they have coming up, and there's just this beautiful expansiveness. And that's what I am so called to share with people, because those of us on the spiritual path, sometimes we know there are other people. We know we're having beautiful shows like yours where conversations are occurring, but it can also feel a little lonely and singular because you're doing your thing. So to see how many other people are in this expanded state, it's absolutely such a sense of community and connectedness that I think is just really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a point that I think a lot of us experience from time to time, and maybe the viewers as well. I know that I do. It's that sense of, gosh, it feels a little lonely to be on this path because the majority of the collective isn't there yet. but
Hmm.
this is the direction we're going in. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of, it's a little, I don't want to sound arrogant or
Mhm.
like special, but it's kind of a leading edge position. In other words, like,
Yes.
okay, we're going to kind of cut this new path, and this is what I feel, and it feels really true to me, and it feels really real, and I can't go back
Yeah.
to not understanding this. And so we keep moving forward, but it can be a little bit lonely. One
Hmm.
of the questions I have is, let's talk about or share your thoughts on the whole human experience of coming down into density, feeling disconnected from source, feeling very limited. And I think in some cultures, and here in the US, we could probably say that there's a lot of maybe subtle negative programming as you're growing up in this culture. It doesn't exactly feel expansive. It doesn't feel like we're unlimited potential. It doesn't feel like we are, sparks of the divine. It feels like we're slugging through mud at times. Talk to us about what you think that journey is all about and how it might inform us as eternal creatures in our journey, which is all happening right now, but nevertheless.
Yeah, yeah. What an amazing question. So much to dive into there. So the first image that comes to mind is that of the diamond. So diamonds are formed under tremendous pressure in dark caves. But look at how absolutely stunning they are after they are shaped and formed. And I think us descending into this density is the beautiful hero's journey of rediscovering who we are. If we came into this world and we had omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresence, not that it wouldn't be fun, because I bet that could be, kind of a hoot and a half for a while, but there's no impetus to grow. There's no
Yeah.
challenge. There's no skin in the game, so to speak. There would be no reason for us to do anything other than just breathe, breathe and eat and love, and that's it. There aren't the challenges that are so formative that, in a sense, prove to, like, we've kind of it's all crafted very intelligently because it is us on this kind of scavenger hunt to find that those bits of ourselves that are unlimited. And I think even in the densest experience, that journey back to self, and even if you don't classify it as being on an ascension path or a spiritual path, but the moment somebody says, hey, that's me, that's the calling of my heart, and maybe it doesn't match my family of origin, maybe it doesn't match my community, maybe it doesn't match my nation, but there I am. That's me. That journey into self is the divine learning itself and seeing itself in the one to then again reconnect into that unlimited potential. So I think there are a lot of different layers to it, but without those kind of, I'm seeing it now too in like test tubes, which is a little, I don't mean that to be bleak and dark, but it's the grand experiment of
Yeah.
what happens when we add this, what happens when we take that away. Oh, we get combustion, or we get an explosion of creativity. And it's just dialing in those settings for ourselves that help us as an individuated soul find our way back to us and to our divinity.
Yeah, beautifully said. So beautifully said. And what I would say is, in addition, not only do we grow from the experience, our individual experience, but our individual experience informs the collective.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So
Yes.
that it's a greater. I often think of it,
Mhm.
Heather, as climbing a really difficult mountain. You can look at that mountain and think, I'm going to spend the next 3 days home in my warm little house, drinking some tea, reading
Mhm.
a good book. Or I
Right.
could spend 3 days climbing that mountain. It's going to be hard. The
Mhm.
conditions are going to be challenging. You're going to feel like you can't do it. You're going to come across all these incredible obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. It's going to be
Yeah.
miserable at times. You're going to wonder why you did it. You're going to be exhausted. And when you're done, it is a rush of understanding of how important that experience was and what you learned
Mhm.
about yourself.
And the views along the way.
Yes.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely stunning. Yeah.
Mhm.
It is. It's an interesting choice to come to Earth. And
Mhm.
I can see, I've talked to some people who said, I think I'm a little addicted to Earth because I keep coming back. And while there's times that I say I'm never doing this again, I know that there is such value in it.
Yeah.
So let's move forward and talk. I'd like to go into just a really short channeling session if that works for you. But first, I'd like to find out who you're working with, who you generally channel, and how that started for you. Did you say, okay, I'm ready now, or did it just happen
Bring it
organically?
on.
Yeah, bring it
So,
on.
yeah. So typically, the collective, or they call themselves a coalition of light, which sounds really lofty, but I kind of always see it on like a business card. We're the coalition of light. The name they gave themselves is the Idalar, and I don't know why. I don't know what that means. I'm still in a process of learning that, but it is a collection of souls from many different dimensions. So I know often channelers are connecting to specific kind of lineages like the Arcturians, Pleiadians, whatever. I kind of get a mixed bag, a potpourri, if you will, of different beings, including angelic realms and loved ones in spirit. And it's kind of this revolving door of whatever messages are going to be spoken or spoken to that day. It's kind of like, oh, I got something to say about that, and they'll step through. So I'm going backwards with the question, but so I always had an awareness of my team of guides. And when I was in that kind of trying it out phase with my friends, often my friends would get so casual about it that they would call me up and say, "What do your peeps have to say?" Meaning my team of guides. And
I need your phone number so I can call you.
exactly, exactly. Right. So, and some would be craftier about it than others. They would have a conversation with me like, "Oh, I've got this, I, I have a lot of creative friends. So we're releasing this album or I'm writing this song and would love you to hear it. But also, what do your peeps have to say?" It's like they were honoring me and letting me be present for the tiniest moment. But what they really wanted were the other guys in the room. So I wanted to start being, to the extent that I could, more open to that, because obviously people were getting value and they were feeling seen and heard and witnessed in a way that I, as human Heather, couldn't fully offer. So I kind of wanted to step into that. And I also had a really beautiful mentor at the time who was doing a lot of channeling and took some workshops and partnered with her to really understand the mechanics of it and how best I could access that for myself. And then when I fully stepped into it, my kind of regular team said, "Oh, well, we're going to hold the door open for these other beings as well." And so, right around the time when I started connecting with the art 4 years ago, this new group of beings also stepped forward and required of me a lot of challenging energy management, I guess is the way I can say it, but it feels very different to connect with them. They have a higher, more combustible. That's the second time I've used that word. I don't know what's coming up with that, but a higher frequency of energy than, and I can kind of differentiate that group from my normal guides. But I needed to also start changing some of just my human habits to be able to hold that space for them. So, and then I kind of worked with this team on the sly in some classes that I had within my community, and people seem to really resonate with them. So we're letting them out. We're letting them out into the world in whatever way that
We're
looks.
unleashing the wisdom.
Exactly. Buckle up, buttercups. They're coming.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how I arrived here. It was, I think, always in the works for me, but different things, as with anything, different things needed to fall in place to have the optimal conditions.
Yeah. When I think about channeling, I think two things that are coming to mind right now, Heather. The first of all, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that other energies are taking the time and giving us sharing their wisdom. I just feel like, oh my gosh, they're helping us. That's so sweet. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing. And then the second thing is that I imagine for them, it's fun. It's an opportunity to, I want to say, swoop in and just share some information that
Yes.
might be useful, share some information with people, energies that are really wanting it. So I think that's a little bit of both. First of all, I'm so grateful. And then I would imagine that it's very fun for them as well.
I would agree, and I love that. I love that interpretation of it. I think that, like we were talking, the spiritual path or our ascension, I think now why we are seeing so many channelers and so many people drawn to this, we're also better now collectively at holding that note or holding that frequency that allows that
Yes.
communication to come in.
Mhm.
So, in the 70s and 80s, we absolutely had beautiful, amazing channelers, but they were few and far between. And
Yeah.
part of that, maybe we didn't have the internet to spread it out in that way. But I think more than anything, it's the collective resonance and the welcoming of it. And if you can imagine too, somebody waiting in the wings, oh, let us go in. We want to share some of our information. We want to, connect. There absolutely, from my perspective, is always that excitement and that love and that upliftment. And I know others have spoken on this as well, but my team is also very keen to share that there's not like a better than. Sometimes we think, oh, it's, the angelic realm or it's Arcturians or Pleiadians or seventh dimension. It's just a different perspective. It's
Mhm.
just like the image they use with me often is of a football field. So we can be on the team down on the field. We can even be the quarterback calling the shots. There's the coaches on the sideline who can see things from their perspective. But then there's the skybox, like the owners and the big wigs, and they just it's the same field, it's the same game. They have a different perspective. So it's all of those combined that moves the ball down the field and that allows all of us to be in this dance of interconnection that is really beautiful and ramping up in the world that we live in now.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you brought up that it's not better. It's
Mm.
just a different perspective. It's not as
Mhm.
though someone in the six dimensions are better. They're just at a different place. They're just working
Mhm.
in a different frequency at the moment.
Yeah.
And I happen to think that those of us on Earth are kind of big heroes because this is not easy.
Absolutely. Truly. That is
Yeah.
often the perspective that others in other dimensions and also in another lifetime, whether we want to classify that as past or simultaneous or parallel or whatever, we may be there serving as a guide or a
Yeah.
communicator for someone else. So yeah, everybody's got their own role to play in this great big
Yeah.
cosmic dance.
Wonderful. Well, how about we bring the guides in? I just have a couple of questions and then
Yeah.
uh, we'll come back with you.
Absolutely. They're very excited. They're charmed. They wanted to say they're charmed by you, Kimberly. I don't know. That's funny. So cute. Hello, bright and beautiful beings. We thank you for the opportunity to connect in this way. How may we be of assistance in this beautiful conversation?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for giving your time and energy to us here on Earth. It's just such a delight. The first question I'd like to ask is from a very human perspective, we're on this planet. Things seem a little bit crazy right now, and it's hard sometimes to find footing. What can you share about where we are in the human journey that might give us a little bit of comfort and a sense of, oh, security and safety that things are going to turn out all right?
It is a valid question at this time, for we know many of you sit in chaos and confusion and witness that in the world around you. And we would say it is the tumult that is absolutely necessary for the transformation. And what we mean by that is without the darkness, there is less visibility on the light. So the things that are coming up in your world that seem to be one after the next, after the next, after the next, are merely opportunities for you to go within and say, if I am witnessing that in the world, what within me is in that same resonance? So it may not be a one-to-one match. It may not be, I see strife and fatigue, and I also am in strife and fatigue, but you may hold a certain note of that within you that needs to be refreshed, replenished, released. It is a time of alchemy in all that you are adjusting in the world. We would also say the possible unpopular belief that your security and safety were never as guaranteed as you think they are. You see it from that perspective now because that is what was familiar to you. You came from a time where things felt stable, where things felt secure, where it felt like you could reach out and be reassured of your position, of your perspective, of your relation. And now that is not there. You are fumbling along in a dark room, as it were. But that was an illusion that there ever was that security. And we don't say that to feel frightening or to feel incompatible with what is in your heart, but we say that to help you understand that the perspective of security is always yours to generate. It is the seed within you, and it is not how you see the world is how you perceive it. It is how you're perceiving the world that shifts how you see it. So, for those of you who can sit in a place of relative comfort and say, I will be okay with whatever comes, that is your truth. That is a place that you have climbed to. We would also say allow for that ground to be a little rocky, to be shaken from time to time, because this is not a time of complacency either. This is a time for everyone to rise up and play the highest card in their deck in every single moment. So many of the things that you witness in your world that feel fatiguing, that feel defeating, that feel shocking, that feel sad, for which you would grieve, it is a time for you to bring the highest aspect of yourself in reverence to all of those. And just as the conversation earlier spoke of your journey shaping who you are, the same is true of the collective. The things that you are witnessing now that are non-preferred are actually remnants and tokens of how much you have shifted and changed. And so be in appreciation and reverence for those and bless them as you witness them, also sitting from the space of your heart. And we will give you a quick exercise. If you imagine taking whatever it is that you witness in the world that scares you, that puts you off, that does not feel comfortable for you, imagine beaming a beautiful blue sapphire light. And we know that would seem strange coming from the space of your heart, but it is a light of clarity. Imagine illuminating that topic. If you see it as a word, if you see it as a picture, if you see it as a feeling or you feel it as a feeling, immerse it, surround it, embrace it in that beautiful blue sapphire light and thank it, show gratitude and appreciation, and allow it to be released for the betterment and the highest good of all.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. You talked a little bit about the changes that are happening here on the planet. And I know that humans, a lot of humans, are experiencing a broader perception. And what I mean by that is their sense of telepathy is expanding a little bit more. Their awareness of different happenings on Earth is changing or shifting. Is that just because the collective is maturing? Does it have to do with energies on the planet? What's creating that change in perception that a lot of us are experiencing?
It is a change in frequency and a change in the harmonious conditions in which you have in your environs. So, Mother Earth, Gaia, as many of you call her, is also shifting frequencies. It is all about, if you imagine notes on a sheet of music, musical staff, we are entering and can now hold and hear and appreciate a different octave of the music. The music has been there all along. Imagine the orchestra has been tuning up, and now many of you are able to resonate at those same frequencies. So it is this shared collection of energy with the earth, as well as the conditions that are prevalent in your space at this time, as well as those who are coming into their awareness of self. And many of the things that would be classified as negative that are happening, they are allowing a beautiful and sacred reflection of others as more and more of you on your planet at this time disconnect from what is around you, disconnect from the systems, disconnect from the organizations, disconnect from the conversations that no longer feel appropriate for you. You are pulling back beautiful bits of your energy to yourself. And from that space, you become fully empowered, fully emboldened to then be authentic and to then invest that same energy in creating the new. What feels unstable to many of you now is that you are in this in between. The old systems have not fully crumbled. The new systems are not fully built. It is this awkward step where your feet have not fallen on either of those eventual states. But it is in this space where it is critical for you to be in a space of creation and to find that which you prefer in the world, what you would like to see in the world. And for many of you, that includes an expanded ability to connect with telepathy, with art, with music, with geometry. There are ways of being in the world that they have not been hidden from you, but the resonances have been difficult to find. So, as more of you bring those sacred bits of energy back to yourself, you allow the expansion into these increased awarenesses, such as telepathy and connection. And for many of you, that will be your preferred way to connect as you go forward in the next 4, 5, 7 years. There will be such a change in how you communicate as humans. You will still have your written word, you will still have your spoken voice, but the authentic you that is frequency, that is telepathy, that is heartfelt emotion, that will come to the forefront more and more. So, for those of you who feel that calling, continue to sit in that space, continue to water that particular garden, if you will, for that is all blossoming and growing at rates that are quite extraordinary and exponential.
Oh, one that made me so happy. That answer made me so happy. Thank you so much. And I just want to ask a quick question before we bring Heather back. Is this fun for you working with humans?
It is a delight and a challenge. We will not be dishonest about that. So much of what we witness is a lack of hope among so many of you. And we that is not something we can easily convey. We can speak the words, we can show the images to you through our words of what is to come, but we cannot plant that upon your hearts in the way that we would like to do. But it is such an honor to witness anyone's journey and to speak words of possible inspiration, motivation, humor, even anything that elevates and lifts someone up. For us, that is the highest and greatest honor. And it is absolutely a delight to see so many of you lighting up. The way we would describe it from our perspective is as if there were these pillars of light turning on, as if you turn on a lamp in your room. But we see it from such a broader perspective that whenever anyone clicks into their authentic self, the light that you shine into the world is indescribable and so much bigger than you can imagine from your human perspective, because that's what you chose to view it from. But from our perspective, it shines out beyond universes, beyond galaxies. And it has such a palpable, important, impactful resonance that draws us to you. And we are so delighted to support that in whatever way that we can, to honor all of that love, all of that goodness, and all of that light.
Oh, thank you so much. It was wonderfully delightful to meet with you and talk with you today. Thank you. Let's go ahead and bring Heather back.
We thank you for this interaction. I always, because I'm human, I have to do the mascara check right after any channeling.
They are lovely. I
Thank
love
you.
them.
They're very yay team, right?
Yes, they're very yay team and
Mhm.
relatable and easy to
Yeah,
understand. Wow,
yeah,
what a great conversation. And I hope you remembered some of it, but and I know it's hard to hang on to it. The thing
yeah,
that really I loved hearing, and I find this in my own life, Heather, maybe you're experiencing it too, is they talked about disconnecting,
mm,
disconnecting from the goofiness, disconnecting from the stuff that doesn't feel good anymore, disconnecting
yeah,
from the broken systems. I find myself doing that just innately. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this fun, creative thing over here.
yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
do that anymore. I want to go do this fun thing out in nature. And it's
Hmm.
it's almost like an unstoppable desire to
Yeah.
just not play in the nonsense anymore. Are you experiencing the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. And I talk with people every day who are as well. It's from my perspective, it's a combination of a couple of things. It's almost like, yes, those things become completely unpalatable to us. It's just like, why?
No, yeah.
Why? It doesn't make sense. And then we can also, because I do remember we talked a little bit about like telepathy and the new way of communicating, because I saw images as that was coming through. It's a little bit in that camp as well, because if we're spending our energy on those things that feel blah, yuck, gross, then we don't have as much that we can invest over here. So it's like this constant tuning fork that our bodies are becoming, where we're like, no, that rubs me the wrong way. I'd rather go over here because that's where I am. That's where my truth is. That's where my frequency is higher. And so many of us, whether we would classify it as being a light worker or anything, grandiose like that, we're all feeling that call to be higher frequency, because
Yeah.
that's setting the stage for growth and for renewal and for expansion. And so I tell people a lot of times too, like thinking of your frequency or your energy as like a debit card. If you go and swipe it over on the stuff that feels yucky and gross and doesn't match you anymore, you don't have as much to spend at the end of the day on the good stuff. So really paying attention to, is it worth me having the same argument for the 10th time when I know someone's not going to hear it because that's their perspective and I'm in mine, and that's just it. We just disagree. It's no big deal. Recalibrating that to be like, okay, that's their perspective. I have mine. I'm going to go over here and be happy and do this thing and play with my dog. And, I took pictures of bees for like 40 minutes this morning for no other reason than I thought that would be fun. So, the little silly things throughout the day too are all frequency and just helping us. It can seem frivolous, but it's helping us create this web and this traction for the higher frequencies coming in.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm like you in the sense that I just do these goofy little fun things that feel good, like taking pictures of bees, for an
Yeah.
hour. And
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of laughing to myself the other day. I thought, Kimberly, you keep going down this road of just doing this fun, creative stuff that doesn't, that maybe other people wouldn't get. You're going to wake up in a whole new reality. And that's not a joke. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen is we're going to
Yes.
create that new reality following that vibrational trail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, because if you think of, I don't know if it's physics or just something, that a collective network of observers determines a reality. Well, if we all stop, and not that we really can do this, but if we all stop talking about and observing and complaining and whatever about the stuff we don't like, start focusing on the stuff that we do prefer, it allows that to just almost like come out of the shadow and expand. So it's that game of energy. Energy goes where your attention flows, or energy
Mhm.
flows where your attention goes, something like that. So it's almost like I see it too sometimes, um, like the old fashioned telephone operators who would plug in, the circuit board, like we're connecting your call over here. We're all just unplugging from those things and we're
Mhm.
plugging ourselves over here
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Pulling that, I'm disconnecting that. Oh gosh, this has been such a fun conversation. I just had a ball with you. Thank you so much. How do we find out more about you?
Oh, thank you. This has been a blast. I've loved it. The easiest place is my website, heathermays.com, HeatherMays. I say that because people want to spell maze in so many different ways. I've always spelled it, even since I was little. And on Instagram, I'm at Hey Radiant Souls. I also have my own little baby YouTube channel under Heather Mays. If anybody wants to come check out some of that, I do a monthly energy forecast and some other channeling videos and things like that here. So would love to connect with anybody who feels the call to explore the beautiful, unlimited nature of who they are.
Yeah, wonderful. I hope you'll come back and see us again.
Oh, I would love to. It would be my
Okay,
pleasure. Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one. Or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.